All right, so today for banding, and there are already YouTube videos, I'm gonna put this up. So alizarin crimson, not cadmium, all right, alizarin crimson, cerulean blue, okay, for the blue, lemon yellow hue for yellow, not cadmium. Do not use any cadmium yet, all right, you can use it, just not yet. The other thing you're going to use is obviously liquid or gel medium, right? Throw me that tube. Wait. Yeah, I want to show it. And use your Gamblin tube of gel medium. Okay, this is for sure. Okay, so what I'm going to do. So the thing is that if I look at Zoe, actually I printed another one out of her. If I look at her, you will notice that in the lightest light will be yellow. The medium value is going to be red, alizarin crimson, and then the dark is going to be cerulean blue. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a little bit. The life of a teacher today. All right, I'm going to take the yellow and I'm going to go in and look for the yellow bits. So like right there is my light, and I don't want it that yellow. All right, what I'm doing is kind of spotting these colors right now, and then I'm gonna go in and move it around with my paper towel or my t-shirt, right? A nice soft t-shirt. Because if you notice when you guys were working with the green, that if you put too much gel medium, it's streaky, correct? All right, or it's too thick and then you can't move it around. So what we're kind of doing is this really should be called stain painting, because we're just gonna basically stain it like wood. So I'm gonna do is basically go in these areas and look for the light, because I see the light in here and I know there's light right there. This is a medium value here. There's light right here and right there. Now you can also do the background as well, because there's leaves, and the leaves, some of it's a little lighter than area. And you can be selective. Looking. Okay, so now that I've got that on there, I can either take my paper towel, all right? So I can take paper towel and I can move this around. Now, it's not rocket science, but you don't want them, and I will show you, to have an abrupt change from red to blue to yellow, right? Because you spent all that time doing values. You don't want to have these really weird kind of spotted areas. So what I'm going to do is I put on just a little gel medium, a little pigment on there, and what I'm doing is just moving this around. And you can keep it loose. It's not going to be like, let's say you messed up and you're like, oh shoot, that really shouldn't be yellow. It's fine, all right? It's not that terrible. So do you see what I'm doing is I'm really wiping it into that, and I'm not getting tons of streaks because I'm not using a ton of gel medium, all right? And I even use my big ass brush, okay? Now what I'm gonna do next is, and you would do it to all the yellow areas, but a lot of Zoe is really a middle value. So with the middle value is now I'm going to take my red for the middle value. All right, I'm going to touch it a little bit, a little touch of gel medium, and now I'm going to put it in these areas. So what you don't want to do, kids, is you don't want to do that. Nothing thick, all right? If it's too thick, then what you do is you simply rub it off. Okay, and you actually can probably use that to move it around in some of the other areas. Use your fingers as well. So what I'm going to do now is just go over and kind of put in, I'm looking for Zoe's middle value. So there's middle values here, middle values here, here, under the plane. It's a little mix between middle value here and darks. We're doing this because it really does help you start thinking where the light is at, where the dark is at, but it's also going to build up those areas. The trick to the Grisaille or Verdaccio classical painting is that you want the areas, the thinnest areas, to be in your shadows or in the darkest bits. So right here, I'm going to go ahead and put that on there. See how she's starting to come along? Now, how do you know how thick or how thin it should be? You should know, you should gauge it by making sure that you can see that color somewhat underneath. Does that make sense? If you cannot see that other color underneath, then it's too thick. Now, I promise you that in the end, you can add more thickness to the light areas, okay? But the thin area really needs to be in the darks, kids. That's how it's gonna make it look like it's moving into space, into air. I'm even gonna put some just here. There's a little middle value here on this side plane of her arm, right here as well. Go in and do you see how I barely have any on here? All right, so that's another thing, is learning how much to put on, how much to take off. So she looks a little scary, but I promise she'll look good. Okay, so because that's another reason why it was important for you to get your values in there, is because you're simply just slowly adding color. Now, classical painters, most of them will at least glaze some areas in their painting. It won't all be glazed. Most painters will always do a little glazing, which is, again, staining these very thin coats of paint and then letting it dry and then putting more on top. You can do the same process with acrylic, and actually I got a YouTube for that when I made the kids do acrylic. And then I switched it the next year, and the ones who did acrylics were so mad at me. They were like, why'd you make us do acrylics? Anyway, I think I was just trying to teach them a little bit more about acrylic. Now I know that's dark, but I'm gonna go ahead and put a little bit of red back in there. You will start building it up anyway. So once this dry, then by next week, I can show you how to put real color in. But if you're ahead of everybody, just look at the YouTube videos. I mean, again, this goes back to if you have, tons of work outside of class, try to stay ahead. That's all I'm gonna say to you. Semester's about over. We really only have so much time left with each other. Don't neglect the background as well. I'm gonna go ahead and just put some of the reds on here too.
So that's what I was wondering, where I have an almost solid background.
Yeah.
Do I just go in?
Yeah. So I will just go in and just invade those side plane of her arm with the background. So if you have hair, I would just merge them all together, because that's how we're looking at it, right? Yes, we know there's hair and then there's background, but honestly, when you look at light and the way it floods in that space, it's not doing that, okay? It is, even the leaves, right? I'm gonna go ahead and make sure that they all kind of collide together, and it's soft. And so we can go in. I'm gonna show you the blue. And if you get too much, just wipe off. Don't fight it. There's no need to fight the paint. So do you see how I'm using the side of my brush? Again, don't do this. Try to use the side and just kind of create these soft edges. There's actually classical painters will use the makeup brush because they're very soft. They'll use that after they put the paint on and lightly go over it, and it makes it really smooth. Other classical painters will also let this dry. I think I talked to some of you guys and take a 800 grit sandpaper and sand it, the whole damn thing down, and then reglaze it again so they get this smooth surface. All right, I'll keep going, but that gives you some idea. Now, do you see now, or you can start to see how she's already building up color, right? Now I'm gonna take my blue, the cerulean blue. All right, so our third color is cerulean blue. I'm gonna take a little bit and then the gel medium, and then I'm gonna go in the darks. But let's say that in here, I know that it's a little darker, right? So it's just right at the edge, and I did put red on there. It's okay, I can go in even with this step and put just a slight bit of blue on there. And what it does is then the blue plus the red makes a deep purple, okay? That's your dark, all right? Now, I know her hair is fairly dark, and I wouldn't leave it like that either, kids. And I'll see that, you guys will come in and it's gonna be bright as hell, and I'll tell you did it wrong, and you're gonna lose that background, and the only way to get it back is basically to paint it white and then to kind of start over. So can you just not do that? All right, so what I'm gonna do now, I won't leave that like that because I can't see the monochrome underneath. So what I'm gonna do is wipe off just a little bit. And you can start to see. I'm gonna also then take a little bit more blue and right here on her cheekbones and right here, around here where it's a bit darker. I'm pushing her darks a little bit more where she's a little bit more blown out here from outside. I'm gonna push this area just a little bit more and just right here. And do you see how I invaded some of that red? That's okay, all right? Because we know it's gonna get dark anyway. But I'm going in and smoothing everything out. There are no hard edges except for the edges you already put on there. And I know underneath here is a little blue. I'm gonna put a little bit more on here. I didn't touch any of the gel medium because the cerulean blue is semi-transparent and a lot more transparent than cadmium, and that's why we don't use cadmium. So what I'm doing now is the cerulean blue, the alizarin crimson, and lemon yellow are all already fairly thin, all right? And so that's why we don't start out with cadmiums. Cadmiums is too opaque, and new painters tend to overdo it, and so I just avoid it, all right, with you guys initially. I'm gonna go in, I know Zoe's got these polka dots for edges on the clothing. You can go back and add a little bit more detail definitely at the end, so I wouldn't worry about it so much. What I'm gonna do is kind of just go in with some of the blue. I already had some purple on there, and just go in and move that around a bit more, because that area is not gonna stay blue. It's gonna be dark black. But I don't wanna add black on there yet. So I'm doing is putting this on here. So that green, what happens with that green is that green mixes with those other colors to create another color. And that's exactly what glazing is. Go in with her hair up here as well. And go ahead and invade some of these spaces. Here. Around the eyes, always a trick if you've got very small portraits to use a little bit smaller brush, but I would still go in, and I wouldn't leave it like that either, is making sure you still add color. And use my fingers for some of her and move some of that blue around. So when you get paint on a certain area, you get too much, I'm very, adapt and overcome and frugal. I'll just move that paint around to another spot. Okay. And let's say I messed up and this area got a little blue. I can, oops, I better be careful. I can wipe off just slightly and then add that yellow back in there. I could even use my fingers to add yellow back in there if I start wiping off too much. There is a point where you overdo it, and so the paint's all mixed together too much, so don't get it muddy, okay? Like I would keep going with this, oops, and making sure that you've got everything, but that would be your banding, okay? It's not that, I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. Because once that dries, then I can add some real colors to it. Any questions?